Hi, it's Donald Davidoff, co-founder and CEO of Real Estate Business Analytics, here for yet another episode of The People Behind the Performance, where I sit down with key leaders and disruptors to dive into what's really driving the real estate industry's success, the role data plays in it, and tell the stories of the people behind it all. I'm here today with guest and good friend Brent Steiner. Brent's the CEO and co-founder of Engrain, a B2B SaaS company offering a collection of map-based visualization products for enhancing the way people find, lease, and manage properties. With more than 30 years of experience in the prop tech industry, Brent has provided thought leadership and solutions in marketing and technology to some of the most recognizable companies in property management, brokerage, and development. Not only his tenure, but his relationships with decision makers, strategists, and marketers in real estate have allowed him to truly understand what pervasive challenges this industry endures. As a good friend of Brent's, I can assure you, he really does have great insights on that. Hopefully we'll hear a few of those today. He's dedicated his career to serving the industry with visionary, easily integrated products to alleviate the industry's pain points, attract and engage prospective renters in multifamily, and arm property managers and owners with the ability to maximize their income. His continual invitations from the industry to serve as a speaker, moderator, and panelist at highly acclaimed and well-attended events is certainly a testament to his knowledge and balanced perspective. Most recently, Brent was a moderator for the 2021 OpTech panel on navigating the culture of data-minded teams, and he spoke at NAA's executive session on You're Only as Valuable as Your Data. Brent is a knowledge junkie, as am I, and a trustworthy authority on ways to positively disrupt the marketplace and innovate technology to add value to prospects, operators, and business leaders. Okay, that was a mouthful. Welcome, Brent. Let's dive right in, okay?
Thanks,
so as
Donald.
you think about the state of the industry today, what's on your mind?
I think the multifamily industry is in a much needed change environment, and I think combined with we're in a weird place because the economy is putting some pressure on the multifamily operators, obviously, which is starting to put pressure on things like rent growth, and so add that with coming out of the pandemic and the changes in touring and in data and BI dashboards and clients to own their own data. It feels finally like there could be some positive change in the industry.
Yeah, although it's interesting, I just saw Yardi's report, right? And we're down to 8.2% year-over-year rent growth. Clearly that's going to continue to go down, but I agree with you. We're in this strange situation where there's a lot of pressures, but the top line numbers are still spectacular. Right. So that's going to be interesting.
Yes, and I think I think one of the things, and you and I talked about this at a conference actually, this is a very risk averse industry, and whether I like it or not, I have to agree with you. There is no incentive for multifamily to innovate, and right now it feels like they're open to it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you think about it, I mean, COVID itself, the pandemic and the lockdown opened up innovation in a big way, and now we kind of have this other change. So yeah, I think that's really interesting perspective. So I mean, when you think about this industry, I mean, all those headwinds, all the challenges, obviously you've stayed in this industry for quite a long time. What is it about the industry that excites you?
I think just as an entrepreneur, I like to solve problems, and the problems are evident. They're visual, no pun intended, in this industry. And I can see that it makes a difference. Like when we provide our solutions to clients, and I'm sure you guys see this too, you just see the lights go off, and they're just inspired to make change. So that's why I'm into it. I also think I understand it really well, and I'm good at sort of understanding both sides, and that's served us well.
Cool. So let's turn a little bit to the personal side. How did you start out in the industry?
Great question. So I actually started a marketing firm many dozens of years ago. And we stumbled into multifamily from a branding and website development perspective. And early on, we built one of the first websites for one of our clients who had a self-hosted PMS system. And that website had end-to-end online leasing because we had access to the database.
Cool.
So I early on saw the challenges with integrating pricing and inventory data. And so we dovetailed into website development in multifamily. And then in around 2008, right before the recession, we identified the need for touchscreens in leasing offices. And so I started the slow migration away from the service model into a product-oriented organization.
So who's been your most influential mentor along the way?
That's a good question. I think it's gonna sound a little cheap, but I think it's our clients. This industry, people enter it and they tend to never leave.
Yep.
And they're super smart people. And everything I learned about the products we've developed has been informed by our clients, who I have friendships with, and we spar. And one of the things that we get a lot is, what kind of market research do you do in your products? And I say, well, we really don't do any, because I'll develop a proof of concept. I'll take it to some of these clients who I do consider mentors and say, tell me why this won't work. And I get invaluable feedback from that. So that's how we've grown this company. Yeah,
I think you sell yourself short. That is market research. It's kind of interesting. I mean, one of the things I like about you, I mean, I seem to attract friends in the industry who are a bit of the provocateurs, right? Todd Cattler, to name one, who's been on this program. I'm sure you would agree. I don't think I'm insulting you saying you're a bit of a provocateur. What is it? I mean, share a couple things maybe that you think about the industry that maybe not everybody agrees. A point of view that might sort of challenge people to think a little more deeply. Now's your chance to get on that soapbox.
Sure. The biggest one is that I believe passionately at this point that renters want to select their specific apartment. They're not looking for a property. And I think that our industry is stuck in this floor plan first search methodology, pricing methodology, and it's totally backwards. And I think that I've always sensed that, but with our products and specifically our mapping products and the way they've been implemented, that's become very evident to me. And when I talk about that with our clients, invariably I get pushback just because this is the way people are used to doing it. And we're leasing apartments from website templates that are 25 years old and largely unchanged. And so I think that's the main thing is I think
that's really interesting, because I think back to my days when I ran marketing at a large publicly traded REIT, and I kept reading about one-to-one marketing, but we didn't really have the technology to do one-to-one marketing in the industry. I don't think people disagree with that now, and certainly with email drip campaigns and other things, there's a lot more you can do capturing data and doing that. But I think your perspective of sort of, there's one-to-one marketing to the person, but there's also kind of one-to-one the person to their home. And to your point, the home is, a property is a tall high-rise or a very large campus on a multifamily, on a garden community. And, that individual home can be very different depending where on the property that is. So I don't know, count me as a fan in your corner that 10 years from now, we're going to look back and go, wow, it was hard to get the industry there, but the industry finally got there.
Yeah, I think part of the reason it's taken so long is because the industry hasn't been able to see the apartments. And I think the unintended consequence of our map technology was we now can show it to you. We can show data through the maps, and Reba, amazing example of that. And going forward, as we are able to, we will focus on just that piece so that we can provide metadata and ways to describe location of apartments that to date has been overlooked.
Yeah, well, another thing I think is the cost for information's come down. I mean, back when I ran marketing, it was thousands of dollars to get a photographer to take pictures of the property. You couldn't possibly afford to do something for each home. Now with all the different technologies out there, with the iPhone, being a great, better camera even than a phone, just the opportunity and ability, drones and all that sort of stuff. Like you can get so much visual data and get it much more granular than back in 2009, 2010 when I was running marketing.
I agree, and I also think the industry, our clients are starting to be open to when we say things like what you just said. We get some pushback. Well, how are we going to get inside people's apartments? And it's going to take too long. And we say, it's going to take 10 years to get all this content. And that's okay. That's
but
like this family home. Buying.
Yeah, the sooner you start, the sooner that 10 years is over. So, when you think about the industry today, what year did you, I don't think you mentioned the year you joined the industry, first started working that marketing.
It was the mid-2000s.
Mid-2000s, okay. So when you think about the industry today, right, what is one thing that Brent Steiner in 2022 knows that Brent Steiner mid-2000s didn't know? And if you could, you'd love to go back and teach that version of yourself what you know today that he didn't know back then.
That's a great question, and unfortunate one for new entrants into our space is that it's very difficult to sell into multifamily broadly. The nuances of the different cohorts and incentives and personas and decision making is so weird in multifamily, and I haven't seen it in any other industries. And we get this from our new employees that are not from the space. And so I think learning to navigate that would have been the Back to the Future cheat moment I would have given myself.
It's funny because I can't remember if you know my brother, but he's done some work in the industry, and he does a lot of sales enablement in other industries. And when he first started working in multifamily, he told me that every industry always says they're different, and he smiles and agrees with them, but they never are. And after about 6 months in the industry, he went, "Oh my God, you're the one industry that really is different." And you have to come and experience it to understand it. So I'm kind of amused that your lesson to your earlier version of yourself is one that I've heard before.
I mean,
makes a lot of sense.
Do companies pitch to the total wrong person with the total wrong message just because, and the related thing to that. And when I talk to CEOs of startups and they say, look, you have a huge number of third-party properties. Like, how did you get that? And I say, one door at a time, brother. And it's taken a long time. Yeah,
no, that's very, very interesting. So when you do run into, newcomers, or you hire newcomers in the industry, are there any particular sort of favorite publications or favorite activities or just things you would point someone to help them kind of get up to speed faster?
All of the usual places. I point people to NMHC over NMA, obviously. I think that we're in a very generous industry. I think that if you show up to these events and you show up to executives and you ask questions, they will give you their time. And so I push networking and relationships, and I'm happy to introduce people as long as their message is intended. And then just attending the events. And I still do, and I'm sure you do it too, where you walk around OpTech. We just got back from OpTech, and I'll walk around by myself just to kind of see what's happening and take it in, and invaluable. Yeah, no, absolutely. It is a very generous industry. I think it's sort of the flip side, right? Because the industry doesn't really have existential risk. People are very slow to make change. They don't have to. But the flip side of that is they don't feel like they lose by being generous. And I think maybe that's, you mentioned earlier, I refer to it as a flypaper industry, right? You come into it and you never leave because you get stuck on the flypaper. I'm a perfect example of that. I think you are too. And I think part of it is that generosity. I mean, I think of my college friends in tech or people I know in the travel industry, it is cutthroat. It's much more collaborative and collegial is maybe the word in this industry. So, I love it despite all the problems. And the other piece I'll add to that I learned after COVID is I think one of the things that binds operators together and their vendor partners is we're dealing with people's homes and actual people. And I think that's often overlooked when we're designing technology and we see things and you're like, you guys, this is somebody's house, and if they can't open their door, that's a problem. It's hard.
I always refer to if Mrs. Jones is calling because it's the third time her toilet backed up, it doesn't matter what technology is there. They got to deal with Mrs. Jones and her toilet. And I don't ever want to forget that, because that's really where the money's made in our industry. So let's switch gears a little bit, talk about data. I mean, for those of you watching that don't know, Engrain and Reba have a formal partnership whereby inside of Reba's BI platform, aside from the normal visualizations, graphs, and tables, you can actually see unit data, all sorts of unit data in the Engrain maps. And in fact, if you're not already an Engrain, an Engrain company, if you buy Reba, they'll actually do a couple of maps for each of your properties. It's in their interest to build up this library of maps, and obviously in our interest for you to be able to see that. So with that in place, just so people know our relationship, when you think about the term data-driven decision making, set of words that's thrown around a lot, what does data-driven decision making mean to you?
To me, it means being able to not rely on reports and sort of, I'm going to call them secondary data sources that we get from all the PMS systems that are out there today. It's empowering tools that help you see, and the way I describe this with maps is maps help you ignore things you don't need to see. And when somebody looks at any type of performance data on a map, whether it's pricing or rent growth or maintenance requests or ESG data, their attention as a human is immediately drawn to a thing, and that's powerful, but it's not novel. We do the same thing on Google Maps every day. So I think that's how I talk about using data, and it's much more efficient that way. I think longer term, the next sort of evolution of this, starting next year, is we need machines to start seeing these things for us to tell us what to do. And maps are, we see our maps as what's called the human interface layer of artificial intelligence, where the machine can see something, but it needs a way to tell a human what it's seeing. And that's what we're focused on.
Well, so I'm interested. Let me dive a little bit deeper into that, because I've been thinking a lot for, I want to say at least 5, maybe 7 years now on the whole concept of AI and its application to multifamily. One of the challenges we face is a lack of data, right? Because most machine learning systems need terabytes, even petabytes of data, and actually our world's not quite so data intense as much as people may believe otherwise. We don't really generate terabytes of data. Curious your thoughts or what you guys are thinking about how to, I have my own ideas about how we can still make systems smarter, but I'm not sure that just pure ML, machine learning, is really the way. Curious your thoughts on that.
I have 2 thoughts coming at it from 2 different directions. One is just using the historical data that we have and building some machine learning algorithms out of that. That's not something that's done today at scale in multifamily. Okay, and that's one issue. Data is a problem. A lot of our clients are moving toward creating their own data environments so that they can move to the world you're talking about. That's going to take a long time. The second, and I think more interesting thing that we've learned, is we're assigning unique IDs to every unit in every single one of our maps, independent from their property management software. And what that allows us to do with that ID is correlate unit level data across multiple providers. Okay, so I don't just want to know about the information I have in my accounting software. I want to know what I have in my smart home software and in my resident sentiment software. Because if you add all these data sources up, these currently disparate sources, there's a story there. Okay. And what we see intuitively, this unit turns every year because it's by the dumpster. I think there's a deeper story than that. It's just a question of correlating IDs, which is novel in multifamily.
No, I think that there's a lot that can be done with even rules-based engines. Or, again, our industry isn't that complex. You don't necessarily need a full ML to have a system recognize something in the data and point it out, right? Like we're working on a system that we'll be announcing next year that's very alert-driven. And the whole notion of it is the alerts aren't some magic thing out of ML or AI. They're a rules-based set of alerts, but they do exactly what you just said, which is point the person to the thing they need to pay attention to and keep their attention away from the things that they don't need to pay attention to. So a lot
right.
of different ways to get to that. It doesn't have to be AI, even though that's kind of a sexy term these days.
And there's to add to that, I think from an operations perspective, there's efficiency to be gained by letting computers make decisions on route finding within a community. Or what we're focused on too is by next year, our maps will be able to be used across a portfolio. Right. So if you're doing maintenance and inspections and things like that, there's no reason to isolate that to one property. When if you're in a geographic area, this route finding that's all AI.
Yeah, well, and that is that's really powerful, especially as the industry is moving more and more to centralization to increase efficiency. Route finding, not just wayfinding, but route creation is really, really important. So that's really interesting to me. Cool. Well, let's just talk a little more about Engrain. What are Engrain's goals? Like, where do you see Engrain over the next couple, 3 years?
Our core product, Sitemap, our goal is to continue our penetration into the market with that. There's about 150,000 interesting properties to us to map, and we're 10% there. Like we're just now starting, and we have institutional support. But as we start to enter into the mid-market, our company in the next 2 years will shift from creating new maps and selling them to persisting them as properties change hands. So we see Sitemap as like cable TV. It's going to be piped for every single property, and the question will be, are you going to pay for it this cycle or not? And we'll convince you how to do that. And then I think our company will evolve into a data company and an API company. And we're well on our way to start that this year.
Yeah, so you've worked with a lot of different levels of data maturity among your customer and prospect base. You kind of alluded to that a little earlier. I'm sort of curious, what do you see as a good place for somebody to start their data journey? Or if somebody's listening to us and they're sort of like, yeah, I get that data's more important. We don't really have a data platform yet, but it's sort of overwhelming. But what's your advice on maybe where they should start?
My advice is talk to your peers, find other companies that are your exact same cohort, and find out what they did, because I think they'll share. And I think it's just start. It's not that difficult to consume existing APIs from all of your vendors and start storing it. And even if you outsource the early days of that, I think that can be very successful. Along with that, though, is what we're encouraging all of our clients to do is they need to audit their data. They need to audit their units. We find as we map portfolios, we see a 3% variance on what's physically on site and what's in the property management software. And a residual benefit of this mapping process is a great way to audit what inventory you think you have. And then start treating your PMS as a system of record and not the source of truth. That's our biggest advice.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the data cleaning aspects. There was at OpTech, one of the better sessions was on data cleaning. It had representatives from Avalon, Waterton, and Cortland on the panel. I actually blogged about it recently, and it was interesting because it's sort of along the lines of what you said earlier, that it takes 10 years to get where you want to go. I think it was Kevin from Avalon Bay who basically said when it comes to data cleaning, it's a big job, and how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And then he pointed out that when you're done with that elephant, there's actually another line of elephants behind that, so you're never really done. But I think that really dovetails with what you were just saying about the data that starts somewhere. Right? If you got a journey, take the first step, even if it's in the wrong direction. At least you're moving.
And I also think sort of an aha in this is maps are impermanent. They change, and real estate changes, which is sort of a difficult concept for multifamily to wrap their arms around. But we're evangelizing that as well.
Cool. What do you see as the biggest challenge to data going forward? What's getting in the way?
Just sort of pure inertia. I mean, it's slow. Multifamily is slow. We've joked about that in several different contexts just in this conversation. And I don't really see that changing. It doesn't matter how motivated some of these companies are, they're big.
Right.
Data also tends to be an area within these organizations that can be sort of ripe for infighting and passing the buck, and people don't understand it. So I just think it's organizational redesign is the biggest challenge in this.
Do you have any advice on how to handle that natural conflict, or how to work through that?
My advice, based on observations and panels that I've hosted, is just having a really clear roles and who's charged with which piece. And if you don't know the roles, hire a consultant and then assign it to people. Because if there's one thing about multifamily, is these executives are tenacious. Sometimes just need the playbook.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because two of the other recommendations that came out of that data panel I was mentioning, one was the importance of a data governance committee. Yes. So a place, to your point, a place for everybody to agree on the roles or arm wrestle where they need to arm wrestle. And then the other one that was interesting was the importance of using pugs. And we don't mean pugs the dog, we mean power user groups. So if you let the power users in each area, each subject matter area, to kind of drive, and you're there, let them point where the road should be, and then you lay the pavement, you can really win hearts and minds. I've seen too many tech-driven BI programs where IT is laying the road, and then they get surprised that ops didn't want to go that direction, or asset management thinks it's too bumpy a road. And so the notion of business-led and technology-enabled has always resonated with me. I've seen many tech-led, and at the end of the day, ops isn't usually happy. So
I agree, and I don't think this is a technology problem, just like self-guided tours, right? I think it's a operations and people problem. And the companies that are furthest ahead, that's how they view it.
Yeah. No, I think you're spot on. Okay, great. Well, let's sort of move on. Since we've done the heavy lifting, we always like to end these interviews with a little bit of kind of rapid fire James Lipton style Q&A. The only rule is don't think too hard. So I think it's 5 quick questions. Actually, I'm sorry, seven quick questions. First one is, what book has influenced you the most?
Boy, don't think about it too hard. I read a lot, so I tend to have a recency bias.
Okay.
For sure. And right now, the book that's influenced me the most is a science fiction book called Seven Eves.
Okay, cool.
Loved it.
What is your favorite time of day?
In the morning. Lazy answer, but when people aren't assaulting me with decisions and I can have thinking time. So I typically get up at 5 and have an hour and a half to get it together.
Love it. What is your favorite app?
Favorite app. If I open my phone right now, the two on my home screen, the first is a note-taking app that I use. It's the Apple Notes app, and then the second is a meditation app.
Cool. What is your biggest pet peeve?
I'm very impatient. I don't like it when people waste time. I need efficiency.
Yep. Birds of a feather here. What's your spirit animal? And that question came from a VP of marketing, not from me.
My spirit animal, Jocelyn, is that her? Blame her for that?
Yeah, you can blame her.
Gosh, I would say magpie.
Magpie. That answer has not come up before. I like it. If you had to pick one food to eat forever, what would you eat?
I mean, I would say Manhattan, but that's not the right answer.
Yeah.
I have to say pizza.
Pizza, okay. And then finally, what's your go-to for a good laugh?
For a good laugh?
Yep.
Good TV shows. I like good comedy. I like dark satire. No surprise.
Yeah, no surprise there. Well, thanks so much for sharing your insights with us today, Brent. Before we leave, where can everyone find out a little more about Engrain online?
Engrain.com, our website, is the best place to go. I'm not on social media, so reach out to me, just Brent@Engrain.com. Happy to continue these conversations.
Excellent. Well, please do. Anybody interested, just reach out to Brent@Engrain.com. Check out their website. Thanks so much again, Brent.
Thanks, Donald. I appreciate it.